Illustrator's envelope distort features provide a way to warp and distort text and objects in a variety of different ways. Illustrator provides three main methods by which you can warp text. Let's take a look at these options. I'm beginning this video with the warp.ai file already open on my screen, and this file is nothing spectacular. I just put some text on top of my artboard that I can begin working with. I will tell you, when you start warping and distorting text, it helps to use a nice, bold, heavy font, because that makes the text a little more readable once you've applied the effect. So to begin, I'm going to click on this text with my selection tool, and I'm going to come up to the Object menu. I'm going to come down to the Envelope Distort submenu, and I'm going to choose the first option here, Make with Warp. Now this option allows you to apply a number of different effects to your text. In this Warp Options dialog, you have a Style drop-down menu, where you can pick from a number of different presets. So we have arc, as you see here. We have arc lower. We have arc upper, arch, bulge, shell lower, shell upper, flag, wave, fish, rise. Then you get down to this bottom category. We have fisheye, inflate, squeeze, and twist. Now, within each one of these presets, so I'll start with maybe the arc setting, you'll notice that it has a default value that automatically appears. And with this style, the arc style, we can apply a horizontal arc or a vertical arc, whichever you prefer. And within each one of these presets, you can customize these settings. So for example, if I increase the bend, it's going to increase the effect that's applied. If I go in reverse, it's going to start adjusting it the opposite way. In addition, I can change the bend, say to 0, and then you can start distorting it in a horizontal or in a vertical direction, depending on what you're looking for. And honestly, you can combine any combination of the three depending on the overall appearance you're trying to create. So if I were to click OK, you'll see that it essentially is taking your text and pushing it into an envelope. And you can see this outer shape here is the actual envelope that the text is being warped into. Now, if you ever want to make adjustments to this, you can just go to the Object menu, Envelope Distort, and you can reset with the warp, which will go back to what you were using. You can release it to start over. So if I choose Release, you'll notice that it detaches the text from the envelope, and you can now see what the envelope looked like compared to the text. I'm going to go ahead and delete that envelope for now. Let's go ahead and click on our text one more time. Let's go to Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Warp, and I'm going to reapply this setting. Now, the cool thing about this Envelope Distort is that these settings can be changed and the actual text can be changed. This is what makes this really powerful. So, for example, if I double click on this, you'll notice that the word wave shows up in its original form. And if I were to double click again so I get my type tool, I can change the word wave to wake, and when I switch back to my selection tool, we can see the actual change being made. It's important to understand that when you double click on this, you're actually going into isolation mode, and we can see that we're on layer 1 and we're inside of the envelope that is controlling the appearance of that text. If I were to come out here and click on the left arrow a couple of times to exit isolation mode, it'll go right back to what it was. Now, when you're still in your type tool, it will highlight as you move your cursor over the text. So you can highlight your text and change that back to what it was. But when you go back to your selection tool, then it will kind of go back to its normal behavior. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click on this. Let's go to Object, Envelope Distort, and choose Release. And that'll release that. I can click on the envelope and delete that, and we can start over. Now we have a couple other options that we can choose. So one of the options is Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Top Object. But in order to do that, I need to draw a shape over this text first. So I'm going to click off of this. I'm going to go to my rectangle tool. Let's start with our polygon tool. and I'm just going to draw a polygon on top of this text. You want to make sure that the object is above the text in the stacking order. Then we can grab our selection tool. I can marquee both of these objects so that they're both selected. And if I go to Object, Envelope Distort, and choose Make with Top Object, it's going to distort my text into the shape that's on top. Now this really behaves just like the other options did, because I can double click, which will take me into isolation mode. And if I make the change again, the text will update automatically. And I don't have to make minor changes. I can make totally different changes, and the distortion will be applied automatically. So this is really interesting and really fun to play around with, because you can achieve a lot of different effects using this option. And once again, I'll click on the left arrow to get out of there, and we can click on this with our selection tool and move this around and change its location. In addition, we can change the color of this object as well. So if we come into our swatches panel, and just apply a different color to this text also. Now, it depends on the shape that you use when you're making it with the top object, because some shapes are going to work better than others, obviously. As a general rule, it helps to keep the shape fairly basic and open. For example, a star may not work as well with this text as other shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. Let's go to Object, Envelope Distort, and we'll go ahead and release that text. You can see there's our envelope, and our text is back the way that it was. Let's go ahead and change this back to the word wave. And what I'm going to do now is show you the last option here. So with this text selected, we'll go to Object, Envelope Distort. The last option is Make with Mesh. And this one's a lot of fun. So we'll choose Make with Mesh. You'll see that in the Envelope Mesh dialog, we can specify the number of rows and columns that will be applied to this text. To get a better idea of what I mean, turn on your preview. And we can see that we have 4 columns and 4 rows that will allow me to subdivide this text from a control standpoint. So I'll leave it to 4 by 4. Let's go ahead and click OK. And you'll now see that we have a grid of anchor points that can be used to distort this object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my direct selection tool. And you'll notice that each one of these anchor points is editable. So as an example, I can click and drag to marquee all 3 of those bottom anchor points. And I can click and drag to distort them and pull them down. If I click on just the middle anchor point, I can pull that down a little bit more. But you really have unlimited control here. And this is where, if you ever had the question of, do I really need to understand the pen tool and Bezier curves, this would be an example of, yes, you do, because as I click on these anchor points, I can pull out these directional handles and distort these in a variety of different ways. So as I click on this object, I can pull this down, and then I can adjust these directional handles to customize the control of what this is going to look like. So I'll click on this end point, maybe over here, click and drag. We can distort this and really just have a lot of fun and control in modifying the appearance of this object. I don't know about you, but I can spend hours with this feature just experimenting with the different options and appearances. They're not hard to create, and with a little imagination, you can create some pretty impressive artwork inside of Illustrator CS6.